Yamji Jimbo Zodon Himi Jan, Zoner Mulum Jimborga Biada, Bagaradargam Zando Shirmado, Stomba Tuji Jala, Kivsham Zar, on the Shanro, the Nijan Gamsa, Jawar Tikishan of Yella. Jimmy Banzo Jala Zoranda, Gonja Tobam Power Shinjilo, Gonja Tobam Power Shinjilo, Gonja Tobam Power Shinjil.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Yanchundan de Jimunga Jivala Kasarpa, Chochikindan Namji, Gariam Zapetiter, Davdan Bitsip Jornala, Kanza Kanzika, Shun of Dungeon Senchiki, Pamadan, Tarti Pamadnam, Dungerle Juri Lat of Zavadan, Rodia Dambim Jernada, Rodia Dambi, Rodia Dambim Jernadan, Tonadan, Jitin the Roger Dambi, so deep counter, no tongue. Jamerji Marmedan, Martin Chiji, Chokchi Gindan Namla Warushago, Ninter, Papa Gindan Namji, Recipji, Santan Bagam, Jito Bagam, Chandron de Shobaba, Munshi, Tigla Wang Girte, Nyanan de Chervagam, Sapji Shanchi, Senhua Chimbo, Tablam Kipi, Gerlon, the Chervapji, Gindan Namji, Tugon Chigbe, Gang Purvi, Surium Tetak, Yons Jivershago. Theater Satum number Tagbadam, Pagbi Lamla Nipi Gindan Namgi, Sonum Jamso Chimbo, Jeno. They left in it Tarti Pamada, Nin Yankur, Che, Ganson Samji Dingurle Tarte Zeku, or Nam Lenji Tripper, Gerwa Tang. Tarti Pamar Nam Dejan Killan Se Ranwadan. Dunjit Sanchiki Pamar Nam Jijan Churga So, hired the Kieni, Liv Deva, Posum Soba Churga. Pusum Soba of Shepherd Euro, the Itse, Jumden de Kastarba, Chochi Gindan Namji Tomer, Jim the Namla, Lady, Dunjit Sanchuki Pamanala, Mormon Shago, the name Santan La Nete Zela Roro Shago, Zela Rorotis, and Tomer, Gumba, and Chutinji on the Tejan shall be Skuzilla Choper Shago, Theater Gindan Namji Nurleba, and Molum, Mormon Shiter Zot Zela Choper Shago, the Itse, Gerlon Mungerti word on Shanchu Sanhua Chimbor Nam Yiran. Riccardo. Dene Gerlon Mungerti we don't ada Mengo Tamcher Jinchate Shiba Ranjan on a Riccardo. Namjik Tikungatse, Mungerti we Matene Yeter Girne, Karamyon Gupi Dungerleon, so Trojerto. Dene Mungerti, Sandiel and Dirkat Sora, Dakum Manian, Kumchosam, the Gindan Gifshan of Latini. Trojor Girgi, Maun Jiktenams, Sandi, Lomata, Kachugan Dirtavi. Tarti Pamagam, Dunjit Sanji Pamanam Kubra Nisam, Jumdan de Gipkasar, Chiji Chiban Shinda Lakso, Daki, Dirtan Chapar Gumba Jinla, Flarian, Chiji, Chiban Chi Lakso, Rikiwa, Gerlon, Gerlon Madan, Yerbodan, Yatedan, Lombodam, Danandon, Yirkur, Yerpun Chimbodan, Yerpun Chungodan, Yerman Mambo, Taka, Shiba Shishan, Tronsovando, Tarti Pamadan, Dunjit Sanji Pami Chet, Erdav Dumbi Sip Jurna Gam. Sanjim Nipiti, Jisam, Gendanji, Graham Zapetiter, Roger Dambi Zavadan Tonganam, notably Chochi Gendan la Pravatan, Teder Kijan, Huadan, Molum, Labrshibe, Tarti Pamanam, Celo Yatabatan, Nad Mebata, Dungerji Nibadam, Mojonada, Dunjan Sanji Pamanam, Yedak Suji, Dungerle Tardel, Hamid Deva, Cabrajan Tobran Euro, Devena, Sanji Jesus Berlubma. Shiba Shishan Zova, Doba Tarki, Tir, the Tarti Pama, Dunjit Sanchuji, Tarti Pamani, Dunjit Sanchuji Pama, Ernam Yilla Chambershiti, Low Reger, Dav Dumbi Sip Jornala, Snudo Zatungu County, Sanjay Dangendan La Perni, Hormon Shago, the Turkibe Pamanam gives Civic Jonan, Sabrin Euro, Tisher, Kandak Sanji Jesus Batam, Chigi Chundun, Nyamsa Lembra Shago, Tice, Gerlon Mungerji Vadan, Coronamba Je, Gerlon Ma, Gevnin, Machi, Jitin, Yeran de Jundun de Gerson Balam, Number Todo, Pamarkiopim Doji Shavar Zoso.
All right, I won't read the small print that follows. It's not good if my name is mentioned. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Some individuals genuinely like to frequently mention their own names. Conversely, some people feel a distinct sense of discomfort when their own name is unexpectedly brought up. It makes them feel a little uneasy. Today we'll continue going through the latter part of the Ullambana Sutra. Everyone already knows the earlier part. Maudgalyayana's mother fell into the realm of hungry ghosts. When Maudgalyayana found out, he was extremely anxious. He first tried to offer her some food from his alms bowl, which he carried with him. But because of her karma, she couldn't accept it. The food turned to ashes. Maudgalyayana became even more anxious. He cried, he made a fuss, he was heartbroken. Then he went back to the Buddha, and the Buddha told him, "Your filial piety is truly admirable indeed, but your mother is burdened with especially heavy karma. So whether it's ordinary Buddhists, or spirits and deities, or even the 4 heavenly kings, none of them can help her attain liberation. Only through the blessing and power of the Sangha from all directions can she be helped. Only then can she attain liberation. Today I will tell you the method for your mother to be freed from suffering and find happiness. This is the only way, and I will explain it to you like this." So, what did the Buddha say? Let me explain below. This is the precise method that truly allows his mother to achieve complete and utter liberation. The Buddha told Maudgalyayana, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when the Sangha from all directions gathers for the Pravarana ceremony, at this time, for the sake of both your parents from 7 generations past and your parents of this life, so that they may be truly liberated from their profound suffering, prepare a truly magnificent meal with 100 delightful flavors and 5 distinct kinds of fresh fruit, or 100 flavored meal with 5 fruits. Either way is perfectly fine. The essential point is that to offer various kinds of rice with 100 flavors and 5 fruits, as well as basins and vessels for drawing water and bathing, along with fragrant oils and candles, beds and bedding, and all the incredibly delicious and wonderfully diverse foods in mundane world. Here, when it comes to the various items placed within the basin, especially considering that earlier, if there are comfortable beds and soft bedding, and you meticulously put all of these essential items into the basin, it seems a bit inconvenient when I read the sutra on repaying kindness with the offering basin. In another translation of it, this sentence is not present. The later version actually doesn't have it. In some versions, the offerings that should be present and available are placed in various vessels. As for the basin mentioned later, perhaps the basin in the Chinese text seems rather small, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a basin. It could also be a relatively large vessel. Maybe it can be explained this way as well. Making offerings to the great virtuous monks of the 10 directions. This is the method for helping one's parents. That is to say, on the auspicious day of the monk's Pravarana, self-confession, all the best foods, the best beds, and so on, everything in this world that should be available, or in other words, whatever is within one's ability, the offerings that one personally feels are especially wonderful, truly delightful, and utterly delicious, are respectfully offered to the venerable monks of the 10 directions. This is indeed the most superior and effective method. First, what everyone needs to understand is the 15th day of the 7th lunar month. Generally speaking, for us monks, there is the traditional summer retreat period. After completing 3 months of retreat practice at the end, this day is called the Pravarana day. It can also be called the auspicious day of releasing the restrictions, because during these 3 months the monks have certain specific rules. What kind of rules are there exactly? They are unable to go out into the world, and they are also unable to openly point out each other's faults or shortcomings. Furthermore, some of the property or goods that have been received cannot be distributed or allocated at will, and so on. There are actually many different types of precepts. When the summer retreat period finally ends, all the specific precepts that were originally set can all be completely lifted and permitted once again. That's precisely why it's also commonly called the day of releasing the restrictions. Here, Pravarana can also be explained. Pravarana means this. Many of our fellow practitioners, especially lay people, may not necessarily understand, but it's okay if lay people don't understand. You just need to know that at that time, the 15th day of the 7th month is actually the last day of the 3-month summer retreat. During this period, the monks did not go out. They practiced meditation, studied and contemplated the teachings, and recited sutras continuously. It's equivalent to our modern-day 3-month retreat. So just as it's about to end, many have already attained realization. Their level of practice is very high, and their observance of the precepts is extremely pure. If you make offerings to the monastic community on this day, the merit is especially great. This is the reason why. As for why we make offerings, this is how it is. Of course, from our current perspective, we might not understand. Some monasteries have different circumstances. Some observe the rains retreat, while others might not. If there is no retreat, is there still such merit? If these monks have not undergone the 3-month retreat, and you make offerings on the 15th day of the 7th month, is there still such merit? Compared to what was said before, the merit of those monks who participated in the confession after completing the retreat, that kind of merit definitely does not exist. However, relying on a unique dependent origination, the 15th day of the 7th month is also an extraordinary Buddha's joyful day. Therefore, on that day, according to our tradition and custom, making offerings to the Sangha is also reasonable. There is a certain amount of merit. This can indeed be stated. There is another aspect that everyone here should consider. In the future, when we promote the Vinaya, it is essential that monastics have their own bhikshus, bhikshunis, shramaneras, and shramanerikas. Each have their own precepts, and it does not mean that everyone should observe the same ones. There are 17 practices that the Buddha permitted and required. Among these 17, 3 are especially important. What are these 3? The first is reciting the precepts, what we call uposatha. The second is the rains retreat, and the third is the release from the retreat. These 3 are commonly known as the 3 fundamental duties that all monastics should properly perform. Why do we actually need to do these? For those who are shramaneras and shramanerikas and above, every month, every half month, they must confess their transgressions. Within each half month, any offenses against the Buddha's rules that have been committed must be confessed. Therefore, our uposatha, the recitation of the precepts, takes place on the 15th and 30th of every month. For monastics, this is the first essential practice that cannot be omitted. The second, the rains retreat, is also very important. When the Buddha was residing in ancient India, because the summer season in India is quite long and extended, and during the 3 summer months, vegetation flourishes and there are many insects outside. If the monastic community were to go out freely, they would step on many insects underfoot. Therefore, to prevent such potentially harmful actions and negative consequences, the annual rains retreat was absolutely required. Back in the 1980s, His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok also placed very special emphasis on this aspect. During the nearly 20 years of the Cultural Revolution in Tibet, religion was not permitted. Almost no Buddhist monastery had any Buddhist rituals or practices. Especially regarding the Pratimoksha precepts, many were not observed. At that time, when things were just beginning to recover in the 1980s, as things were just being restored, His Holiness emphasized that every monastery should restore its original practices, such as reciting the precepts, observing the rains retreat, and the confession ceremonies. Afterwards, our institute also sent many Khenpos out. At that time, I had just arrived and didn't understand anything, but they asked me to go as well. I had just become a monk then. I was also a bit curious myself. I agreed, and His Holiness agreed as well. In 1986, I went to a monastery in Mayarkang. In 1987, I went to Mount Wutai. In 1988, I also went to that monastery. Later, in the year 1989, I went to another monastery in Danba. At that particular time, during our annual rains retreat over there were approximately 30 or 20 people present. It wasn't a lot of people. It was also a small temple. But now some small temples in the Han region are actually a bit bigger than that one. Some of the small temples nowadays are dilapidated. Some Dharma friends here are eager to take over temples. You can also take over a temple, but you must be clear about it. Otherwise, after you've worked so hard, once you finish rebuilding it, the authorities take them back. This kind of situation does happen. So you really need to look into it carefully first. I was just talking about all sorts of things earlier, which isn't very good. What I had mentioned just now was also truly and indeed the case during our recent rains retreat. But in Tibetan areas, there's a rather unique situation. Traditionally, those Vinaya masters who diligently enforce the rules, most of them basically observe these precepts for about a month and a half. According to the Buddhist scriptures, the summer retreat should last 3 months. Unless there is a war or widespread unrest that particular year, then it is perfectly acceptable to do only half of the planned retreat. Perhaps it's because of the climate in Tibet. In Tibet, for example, when we do construction projects, it's not like in Han regions or India. The time when there are the most insects is also about a month and a half in the middle of summer. We don't know the reason. In the past, when we were discussing different Vinaya questions, we asked about this, but there hasn't been any truly reliable answer. There are similar responses, but it seems like it's not easy to give a clear explanation either. Basically, in all of Tibet, the initial month and a half of the year is not typically used for the retreat at all, and the retreat is observed during the latter month and a half. The retreat ends on the 15th day of the 7th month. There shouldn't be any difference regarding this. The day the retreat officially ends, which is also commonly called the Pravarana day, because for 3 months or a month and a half, one cannot mention any faults. On that day, the steward can ask questions. He can ask whether any of the monks have had any faults with each other. You can speak up and so on. The various offerings for Pravarana can be fairly distributed to everyone present. As for the specific boundaries of the retreat area, after performing the karma vakana, ritual procedure, everyone is free to leave. However, there is a particular requirement in Tibet. On the night before Pravarana, specifically the evening of the 14th day, it is traditionally stated that throughout the entire night, one must diligently and continuously recite the profound and significant 12 deeds of Shakyamuni Buddha, which encompass the entirety of his enlightened life and teachings. I myself have recited them 3 times. By 2 or 3 in the morning, everyone had fallen asleep. So I said, there's no use sleeping anyway, it doesn't really matter. Let's just visualize and recite through the night. Then everyone went back to sleep. It seems that the Vinaya masters in the past did the same. The idea is that there is a requirement to recite all night. Only in the morning of the next day can the ceremony be performed. This is how it is. This might be different from the Han region and other places, including when we went to Thailand at those times. If you ask them, in some places it's not quite the same either. This is called the Day of Pravarana. Among Buddhist monks, anyone who is at least a novice can certainly participate in the annual rains retreat. However, if you have not yet received full ordination, you absolutely cannot participate in the rains retreat. In the future, if we monks are truly capable, if you are able to establish a monastery, then it's best that the monastery also recites the precepts and observes the rains retreat. At the end of the retreat, there will definitely be a ceremony to lift the restrictions. Some people might ask, our Buddhist Institute has such a large monastic community, so why don't we have it here? His Holiness has answered this before as well. He said that if our Buddhist Institute were to observe the rains retreat, according to the past, when the rains retreat was held in Tibet, the income was very large, there was a lot of revenue. So His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok said, if our institute were to observe the rains retreat here, perhaps offerings in our institute would increase significantly. Monks from monasteries in several nearby counties might have significant objections. So His Holiness wisely said, our institute will not observe the annual rains retreat. We can send some Khenpos over there. They will only recite the precepts, not observe the rains retreat. This is what His Holiness originally said as well. Therefore here, some Dharma friends from Vajra subduing Mara continent quietly observe the rains retreat individually. The income is not particularly large. There are also no particular concerns about this in the surrounding area, so there really isn't any issue. What His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok said is not contradicted either. As mentioned earlier, at this time, if you offer food to your parents in this present life, there are several different explanations regarding the 5 fruits mentioned here. For example, among fruits there are 5 categories. If you carefully look at different commentaries, they often mention things like juicy pomegranates, sweet plums, refreshing melons, and crunchy walnuts. In any case, there are various different explanations, actually, when it comes to the 5 fruits, apples, pears, bananas, just joking around here. It's just like the ancient 5 grains, different various kinds of fresh fruits. And, as mentioned clearly earlier, here some specific examples are things that are physically touched by the body or distinctly smelled by the nose, things clearly seen by the eyes, deliciously tasted by the tongue. All of these sensory experiences are indeed included. For example, here there are some very specific cases. Food, for instance, is something that is typically tasted. Bathing water and vessels. These are things that are touched by the human body. Scented oils. These are things that are smelled by the nose. And lamps. These are also things that are clearly seen by the eyes. But the only thing not mentioned is sounds heard by the ears. This is not discussed in great detail here. Also, among our 5 important things, food and medicine are not mentioned. Of course, just because they are not mentioned here doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't be offered, especially to the monastic community. Offerings related mainly to various types of food and sustenance can be generously made to the Venerable Sangha. After making such respectful offerings, the esteemed Sangha graciously accepts them. Therefore, the Sangha in all directions should be offered to in this way. After making offerings, those Sangha from all directions, next it says, on this day all the holy assembly. On that day, whether it is the Buddha's joyful day or the Pravarana day, all of these holy beings, some are practicing meditation in the mountains like those of the Hinayana tradition, and in our Tibetan region there are also many, including those within monasteries. At that particular time, after establishing the proper boundaries, some practitioners can also stay in their own individual retreat rooms. If there is some warfare, or if major adverse conditions arise, during the rains retreat, blessings can be performed, and it is also permitted to go out, but only for 7 days. Many of you have probably also participated in the rains retreat. Some members of the Sangha meditate in the mountains, some have attained the 4 fruits, some practice walking meditation under trees, though perhaps that's not so common now. Only in a few Theravada Buddhist countries do people still practice walking meditation under trees. Nowadays, it seems that elsewhere this practice no longer exists. Monastics now live in their own rooms, and their rooms are often decorated very beautifully, with exquisite details and a serene atmosphere. If monks today were to sit under trees, perhaps even the area directly under the tree would be fitted with a clear glass enclosure, providing a modern yet contemplative space. This is just a different era. Those with the 6 supernormal powers teach freely. Some holy beings possess complete mastery over the 6 supernormal powers, also manifest as Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas. And great bodhisattvas from the 1st to the 10th bhumi also appear in the form of bhikshus, skillfully and expediently manifesting the appearance of bhikshus among all these assembled beings. The great holy assembly just mentioned all share the same mind. Everyone has the same intention to accept offerings, and then they receive the bowl and rice. The bowl and rice are what was just mentioned, the special meal offered on the day of Pravarana, the very last day of the annual rains retreat. No matter what the situation of the Sangha is, some may be in retreat rooms, some may be in their own monastic quarters, some may be manifestations of Shravakas or Pratyeka Buddhas, some are manifestations of bodhisattvas, some are ordinary monks. But regardless, everyone shares the same mind, having compassion for the benefactors, and in this way they accept such offerings of food. These esteemed members of the Sangha possess truly pure discipline and diligently cultivate the holy path, which is indeed the path of the noble ones, and so on. They have an ocean-like abundance of extraordinary and profound merit, which is truly remarkable. Originally, the noble Sangha community also possesses many truly inconceivable spiritual merits. These dedicated monastics have immense great merits, indeed a vast, boundless ocean of profound merits, as we explained last year in the sutra on praising the noble qualities of the Sangha. The supremely wondrous jewel-like virtuous Sangha nurtures the seeds of merit in all living beings. Those who bestow supreme fruits upon humans and gods, none surpass the precious 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Our eminent monks and great masters of the Sangha community, in fact, they often carefully nurture, guide, and compassionately the seeds of merit within sentient beings. Moreover, for those who make offerings and pray, they bestow the supreme results of humans and gods. Therefore, in our world, no field of true and genuine merit or significant achievement surpasses the Sangha jewel in Buddhism, that is to say, the Sangha itself. So the merit of the Sangha is truly, truly immense and profoundly significant. Sometimes, as I mentioned yesterday, in the ancient Buddhist scriptures, the compassionate Buddha told his aunt that if you offer your sincere offerings to the noble Sangha, the spiritual merit you gain will be significantly greater. At certain specific times, the profound merit of the Sangha truly surpasses even that of the Buddha himself. Moreover, in the degenerate age, the Buddha has already manifested parinirvana long ago. The Sangha community serves as a direct representative of Buddhism. Therefore, they naturally possess such profound merit. Making offerings in the presence of those with such merit, making respectful offering to these Pravarana monks, that is, the Sangha who are currently ending their retreat, one's parents and 6 kinds of close relatives in this life. As for the 6 kinds of close relatives, perhaps they are not specifically designated either. It means, for example, brothers and sisters on the father's side, uncles and paternal uncles. These can also be included on the mother's side, according to your way of saying it. Aunts, maternal aunts, and so on. These can also be included. Also, our loyal servants, cherished friends, and devoted disciples, all of these individuals can be considered as very close relatives. Basically, if you want to help others, one thing is to wish for your parents' health and longevity in this life. It is also very important to recite this sutra. For your 6 kinds of close relatives as well as others, for all sentient beings formed a connection with you. If you wish them to attain happiness and liberation in this and future lives, you should make offerings to such a Sangha. One can escape the suffering of the 3 lower realms and be liberated from the pain of the 3 evil destinies. They will be liberated in due time. Their food and clothing come naturally. If you recite this scripture and make offerings to the Sangha for the one making the offering, many kinds of food and drink will come to you naturally. Also, if your parents are still alive, they will enjoy blessings and happiness for 100 years. Some translations do not include this line, and it is missing from the version on my computer, but it seems that other translations have it. If it refers to parents in this life, their merit will significantly increase. They will experience profound happiness and live a long and fulfilling life. Furthermore, if this refers to the parents of the past 7 lifetimes, then they will be reborn in the glorious heaven of joyous manifestation, a realm of pure bliss, or as spontaneously manifested beings in the heavenly realms. I see that some commentaries say that they are reborn in the heaven of joyous manifestation, while other commentaries say that they are spontaneously manifested in the heavenly realms. They enter the heavenly radiance and enjoy the blessings of the heavens, all the glory and immense wealth as well as the profound happiness of the heavenly realms, such as abundant wealth, extended longevity, and these kinds of true and genuine happiness. In other words, whether for parents in this life, or for those from the past 7 lifetimes. When it comes to 7 lifetimes, most of us, at most, can only count back 2 or 3 generations. Beyond that, it's impossible to keep track. And actually, when we mainly refer to the parents of 7 lifetimes, it essentially means all sentient beings who have been our parents. All of this is extremely beneficial and profoundly helpful. Some of us Buddhists, whether for our parents in this present life, or for the parents and all sentient beings of the past, as well as all those who are connected to us, and indeed all beings, here it doesn't specifically mention the 6 kinds of relatives. If it is very good for everyone, then by relying on this sacred sutra, we can effectively help them attain ultimate liberation, and we can also sincerely pray for abundant blessings. At this significant time, the Buddha graciously instructed the venerable monks of the 10 directions. The Buddha specifically requested the entire monastic community from all directions that they should first diligently recite mantras and make sincere aspirations for the benefactors. As for making these aspirations, it truly means to recite mantras, chant sacred sutras, and make heartfelt prayers. What exactly are these prayers for? They are specifically for the parents of 7 lifetimes, to help liberate the parents of 7 lifetimes for them, ensuring their spiritual well-being. In this translation, the logic is a bit out of order. It's a little bit lacking in overall coherence and clarity. However, since the translator is quite remarkable, there shouldn't be any problem with the meaning. But when we explain it, we need to pay a bit of attention. The meaning is that the Buddha asked the monks from all directions to do this for these benefactors, and that they must recite mantras and sutras to help them attain liberation. Who are they liberating? The parents of 7 lifetimes, so that they may be free from suffering and find happiness. If such aspirations are truly and indeed made, then the monks who perform these liberation rituals, they must constantly maintain a deep meditative state, not let their minds wander or become easily distracted. Both their physical actions and their minds should be fully absorbed in meditation with right mindfulness and clear awareness. Only then can they properly accept the food offerings. Because the food offerings provided by the generous donors are so abundant and plentiful, what should be done when the offering ceremony is finished? When first receiving the food, when the offerings are initially presented, they should not eat it right away. They should first make an offering in front of the Buddha. The food should be placed before the Buddha or in a stupa or temple. If there are painted images of the Buddha or some statues or sculptures, and if it is truly impossible to find a suitable Buddha image, then you should visualize the Buddha in your mind and make the offering before him. We often do this as well. In fact, during our retreats, we also do this. This includes when we receive offerings at noon. We first pay our profound homage to the many enlightened Buddhas and compassionate bodhisattvas. Even when partaking in the simple act of drinking tea, generally among the revered Nyingma tradition, before offering tea, we often pay homage and make offerings to Guru Rinpoche, as well as to Bodhisattva Vajrasattva and King Trisong Detsen. This is also a common practice. Especially during spiritual retreats, this particular aspect is taken very seriously and with great consideration. These kinds of scriptures must be recited. It seems that in Han Chinese regions it's the same. At this time there are also recitations. As you can see, it is also mentioned here. After the monastic community has finished reciting mantras and making aspirations, then you may eat yourself. In Han Chinese regions there seems to be a similar verse. This is mentioned in the Vinaya in 4 parts. There is a verse in the Vinaya in 4 parts that says, "Those who practice generosity will surely gain its benefits. If one gives for the sake of joy, one will surely attain happiness thereafter." This particular verse has always been highly and profoundly valued. In fact, this specific verse, which is quite significant, also has its origin in the Vinaya in 4 parts. When the Buddha was practicing austerities, at that time the 4 great heavenly kings offered golden and silver alms bowls, among others, but later the Buddha did not accept them. Relying on his miraculous powers, he transformed them into an ordinary alms bowl, and inside there was a significant amount of honey offered to the Buddha. At that time, the Buddha recited this verse. There was such a remarkable event. I also saw this clearly recorded in the Vinaya Sutra. There is also this verse, but some details in this verse are somewhat different. At that time, it seems King Bimbisara, also known as King Chayavarman, Shadow Victor, made offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha, prepared many offerings, including especially exquisite foods, as well as beautiful gardens. These were all respectfully offered. When making these significant offerings, the Buddha also recited this particular verse. However, there is a slight but notable difference in the 3rd line of the verse. In Vinaya in 4 parts, it specifically says, "If one gives for the sake of happiness." In the Vinaya Sutra, it explicitly states giving for the benefit and happiness, and if one gives for the sake of happiness. It is merely a subtle difference of a single word. However, perhaps this variation was due to the different translators working at that particular time. There shouldn't be much significant difference in the other remaining parts of the text. If this particular sacred verse is recited properly, it is also considered to be very important and meaningful. Also, in traditional Han regions, I have heard that there are also different recitations. For example, in the Avatamsaka Sutra, there is also a verse, "When the meal is finished, may I vow that all beings accomplish all their endeavors and possess all Buddha dharmas." The meaning is that after you have completely finished eating and truly enjoying your delicious food, you pray that all sentient beings may truly receive the profound benefit of the Dharma. This is because within the extensive Avatamsaka Sutra, there appear to be approximately 141 distinct mayol aspirations. In the chapter on pure conduct, there are also such aspiration verses. Some of us monastics, whether during the annual rains retreat or at other times outside of it, if there are generous offerings presented to the monastic community, we gratefully accept them. At the very least, we should make a brief and meaningful dedication. If circumstances truly permit, and it is entirely feasible, it is best to recite the sutra on recollecting the three jewels, as well as the king of aspiration prayers, including the Ullambana Sutra that we are discussing here. In this way, whether for the donors or for oneself, there will be very great merit, which is very important. This is what the Buddha required. Earlier, it was about letting the donors make offerings to them. Making offerings brings great benefit. The Buddha also required the monastic community after receiving offerings, if you don't recite any sutras and just leave, that's not very good. Here, we also currently have some Dharma friends present who are unwilling to accept offerings from lay followers. That's also fine. It's voluntary, right? If you insist on forcing someone to accept offerings, it's nothing special. Some people are initially unwilling to accept, but later accept when conditions are not so good. There are cases like this as well. Some start off not doing so well, but later become great Dharma teachers and don't need to recite sutras. This also happens. In any case, all of these are acceptable. But if you are going to accept offerings, at the very least, every day you should dedicate merit and make offerings for the donors and the faithful, then you must recite sutras. Otherwise, if you don't recite sutras, the other day, some stewards from the finance department and some Khenpos were also saying, when we give you this money for reciting sutras as an offering, it's an offering for reciting sutras, not for you to do other work. If it's for doing work, if you're being hired to do labor, then that's not sutra recitation money. It should be payment for work. So you must recite sutras properly. That's the fundamental requirement. So as dedicated monastics, we should always pay careful attention to this important practice. Next, at this moment, Maudgalyayana and the other great bodhisattvas were all filled with great joy, all very happy. The Buddha had already spoken this Dharma, and everyone was extremely happy. The sound of Maudgalyayana's earlier sorrow, profound sadness, and heartfelt crying naturally disappeared. He completely stopped crying. Just now, he had been crying so very hard over here. Maybe he had been crying the whole time. But after the Buddha had finished speaking in this manner, indeed, Maudgalyayana was very happy and stopped crying. At this moment, Maudgalyayana's beloved mother was experiencing great suffering. Perhaps after the Buddha finished expounding the sutra, or maybe on some other day, it's not very clear, because at that very particular time, it was uncertain whether Maudgalyayana could know or not. Here, it clearly states that on that very significant day, Maudgalyayana's mother, at that particular time, Maudgalyayana's mother was completely liberated from her suffering. Originally, she was enduring the severe torment of being a hungry ghost for a long kalpa, a vast and immeasurable period of time. But now she had already been liberated. The Buddha's blessings are truly inconceivable and profoundly impactful. Originally, Maudgalyayana's mother. Some ancient sutras say she was liberated from the suffering of 3 kalpas. There are indeed such accounts as well, while some sutras mention she suffered for just 1 kalpa. In any case, it was a very long period of time. All of that suffering has now been completely relieved. After her liberation, she was reborn in the Buddha land of radiant assembly. There are 4 things that an arhat does not know. At that time, Maudgalyayana did not know because it was extremely far away. Later, it was only after the Buddha spoke at some length that he learned about his mother, who had already been reborn into the pure land of Rashmiprabhasa Buddha. This is also mentioned in some other similar cases. At that time, there were indeed such accounts. For example, in the classical Chinese text known as the Forest of Gems in the Dharma Garda, which is a significant compilation, it is explicitly stated that there were indeed 16 powerful kings at that particular time who attentively heard the Buddha teach the profound Ullambana Sutra. After the Venerable Maudgalyayana's mother ultimately obtained the Dharma of complete liberation, King Bimbisara was then extremely delighted and truly overjoyed at that significant time. He carefully used the precious 7 treasures such as gleaming gold, shining silver, and vibrant agate, and beautifully crafted vessels made from these same 7 treasures, including radiant coral and iridescent mother of pearl. He then proceeded to fill 500 magnificent golden vessels with a diverse array of various offerings, each one prepared with great care, and also 500 silver vessels, as well as many different and beautifully crafted offering vessels, meticulously made from the 7 precious treasures, to respectfully make all kinds of generous offerings to the esteemed monastic community. After returning to his own native country, he remained there. He again used different jeweled alms bowls made from the 7 treasures and offered all kinds of different and varied offerings, presenting a wide array of choices and options. At this significant time, his parents, encompassing those from 7 generations in the past, were purified of the karmic sins of birth and death accumulated over 72 kalpas. Because of the benevolent King Bimbisara's compassionate actions, many people around him were profoundly moved, including the venerable elder Anathapindika at that significant time, as well as an ordinary humble woman. They did not have so many additional offerings, but they did their best within their means. And according to their own circumstances, they also made offerings to the monastic community. After making these offerings, likewise, their parents from 7 generations past were also fully purified of the karmic sins of birth and death accumulated over 72 kalpas. Such profound and compassionate actions undertaken by the Buddha at that specific time in ancient India indeed led to many different and truly miraculous events, much like this one occurring. For instance, Maudgalyayana's mother had already attained the ultimate state of liberation. At this time, Maudgalyayana addressed the Buddha, saying that the mother who gave birth to this disciple had in fact received the blessing and power of the 3 jewels, as well as the power, merit, and blessings of the Sangha. She had already truly left behind the suffering of the lower realms. She had attained complete liberation. This is truly, truly rare and remarkable. He also felt extremely joyful. That day, upon hearing about his mother, he was especially anxious, but now he was greatly relieved and completely at ease. This is indeed very good. Then Maudgalyayana respectfully asked if, in all future generations, all Buddhist disciples could also potentially save many others by making generous offerings to the venerable Sangha of the 10 directions. In other words, performing the Ullambana offering, as we discussed yesterday, is a way to save sentient beings by making offerings in this manner. In this particular case, can we truly save our beloved parents in this very life? Or even our parents from the past 7 generations, is that possible? At that time, Maudgalyayana was truly remarkable. He did not just stop after his own mother attained liberation, thinking, that's enough. He didn't do that. After his mother was liberated, he asked again, can all sentient beings in the future truly attain complete and ultimate liberation for their parents from countless lifetimes' remains? The Buddha said, excellent, what a timely question. Excellent, what a timely question means, well done, well done. The phrase timely question here probably doesn't mean he asked quickly, because he had already finished asking. Here, timely question likely means that the question was indeed very straightforward and quite direct. Your insightful question is especially good and well phrased, because the Buddha felt that his question was very relevant. And then he was about to answer. The Buddha said, I was actually planning to talk about this myself. Your question happens to touch on this very point. Now that you've asked, I will answer you again. I was actually planning to talk about this myself. Not only can Maudgalyayana's mother attain liberation, but in the future, all these people's parents can also attain liberation. Actually, I did mention this particular point to everyone yesterday as well, In Han regions, we are quite fortunate to have such truly wonderful scriptures to help deliver our parents from countless past lives. And we are indeed especially grateful to the noble lineage of Dharma kings and monarchs throughout history. I saw in the comprehensive record of Buddhas and patriarchs that it was actually Emperor Wu of Liang, during the period around the 400s to 500s AD, which is such a long time ago from now. At that time, there was already the significant Ullambana festival. This important tradition is also explicitly mentioned in the comprehensive record of Buddhas and patriarchs. Later on, it seems that many emperors of the great Tang dynasty also diligently practiced this revered tradition. So I truly believe it was the consistent and dedicated promotion by our generations of monarchs. Otherwise, these profound and valuable traditions might not have spread so widely across the land. Therefore, as devoted Buddhists of our current generation, we should also diligently ensure that these fine and cherished traditions are never lost or forgotten. The excellent traditions and good rituals from the past should be carefully preserved. So, whether you are some of the younger monastics, or indeed any individual who is dedicated to this path, you should carry a sense of responsibility. What kind of lineage did the monasteries have in the past? What traditions were there? And how were things done in ancient times? Now, we should continue to uphold these important practices. Nowadays, some temples are built to be especially beautiful and magnificent and resplendent. But when it comes to their inner traditions, some of them neither teach nor expound Dharma, nor do they have traditional rituals or chants. They do not follow proper practices. Some individuals have never truly engaged in deep listening, thoughtful contemplation, or diligent practice themselves, and then they just add this or that as they please. Some of the recitations they might choose to add could include all sorts of worldly verses and various chants. None of these are necessary, so the scriptures that most monasteries recite nowadays, these are especially good. They are scriptures with great blessings and meaning, and there are chants as well. But as for the lineage of these chants, if the younger generation does not inherit them, then many of the things that the elder monks know will be lost. This is exactly the situation in our Tibetan region. Currently, there are indeed some older monks who are quite skilled and possess considerable experience, but it is now apparent that their memory may unfortunately not be as good as it once was, and some things may have already been completely forgotten. Once they are truly gone, the monastery's ancient recitation traditions might all entirely disappear, leaving a significant void. So one should follow the customs of their own monastery and adhere to the local traditions. These should be preserved within the monastery. Whether it's the Rains Retreat or the Ullambana festival, they should be properly and thoroughly carried out. Just now the Buddha, the Enlightened One, said, "I will answer your question." You asked a very good and insightful question. The Buddha, with his great wisdom, said, "Good man, if it is a bhikshu or bhikshuni, a king, a crown prince, or ministers and chancellors, as well as the 3 dukes and all the officials, what we usually refer to as the civil and military officials, and also the common people, as well as the general populace, that is, ordinary citizens, as well as those who practice kindness and filial piety, meaning those who are filial to their parents and possess deep compassion, should first honor and serve their living parents with utmost care, and also respectfully remember their departed parents from the past 7 generations. On the 15th day of the 7th month, the 15th day of the 7th month is a particularly meritorious festival called the Buddha's Joyful Day, also known as the Pravarana Day. As mentioned earlier, placing 100 varieties of food in the Ullambana bowl to make offerings and give alms, both are entirely acceptable ways to the venerable Sangha of the 10 directions, to the Pravarana monks at this particular time, wishing that one's living parents may have a long life of 100 years without illness, and that all afflictions and sufferings may be completely eliminated regarding our beloved parents' health and well-being. I didn't say anything wrong yesterday, did I? Perhaps it mainly refers to parents who have passed away. In fact, in this life, some people, in order to repay the kindness of their parents, nowadays, when many people try to repay their parents' kindness, they buy them a mobile phone. But after buying a phone, their parents might not even be able to use it, or may not be able to see it clearly. So sometimes truly repaying them spiritually is actually even more important indeed. When it comes to worldly wealth, there is material wealth and there is also spiritual wealth. In terms of spiritual wealth, if you can give your parents even just a little bit of faith, if they don't have any faith, doing some Buddhist practices for them is also very important. Wishing for your parents in this life to live long, be healthy, and free from worries can be of great help. Even for your parents from 7 generations past, they can be freed from the suffering of hungry ghosts and attain the rewards of being reborn as humans or gods, enjoying incomparable happiness. This will definitely be achieved if we do it with sincere dedication and effort. We should absolutely do it. The Buddha also said later that Buddhist disciples, especially those who practice filial piety, should always keep their beloved parents in mind at every single moment. No matter if you are a monastic or a layperson, regardless of whether your relationship with your parents is good or not, as long as in this life you have relied on their kindness, you have gained the light of human existence. If it weren't for them, truly, you wouldn't know what you would have become now. This is something everyone knows. So we should always remember our parents in this life. Always remember the parents from beginningless time. Sometimes when we think about it, truly, parents are truly quite pitiable. For the sake of their beloved children, even if their own personal health is already in a very precarious state, they still constantly worry about their children's well-being in future. Many of these profound and selfless feelings we can all deeply sense and appreciate in our own lives. So we should always keep our parents in mind, even up to the parents of 7 generations past. Every year, on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, we should use filial piety and compassion to remember the parents who gave birth to us, as well as the parents from the past 7 generations. You should indeed hold the Ullambana ceremony for them, and then proceed to make offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha. By relying on this method, you can repay the immeasurable kindness your parents have shown in diligently raising and lovingly nurturing you. This profound kind of gratitude can truly be repaid in this way. All Buddhist disciples should always strive to uphold this practice. If you are a devoted Buddhist disciple, you must perform such important Ullambana ceremonies. If you cannot find a Sangha or cannot find anyone suitable, then make offerings such as fresh fruits and the 5 kinds of fruits before the sacred 3 jewels. Then recite the Ullambana Sutra and then dedicate the merit. Nowadays, and perhaps increasingly in the future, it may not always be possible to find a Sangha. If you can't find one, it's okay. Don't let yourself be deceived by others. At this time, on the 15th day of the 7th lunar month each year, you can make offerings yourself before the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, offering some offerings, and then sincerely recite the Ullambana Sutra yourself. You should dedicate the merit to your parents of this life and the 7 past generations. At the same time, when you have time, sometimes, if you have time, we will also recite it once again in just a moment. If you have the time, let's recite it together. You should be able to rely on this method to help liberate your deceased parents and pray for blessings for your parents who are still alive. Some parents are quite healthy, and indeed many of you listening likely have very healthy parents. But for me personally, both my beloved father and my dear mother are no longer in this world. But I also, in order to repay my parents' kindness, whether it's translating into Tibetan or explaining it to absolutely everyone this time around, I sincerely hope that they can truly find genuine happiness and contentment, and not fall into the 3 lower realms of cyclic existence. This should be the kind of mindset we have. So for all devoted Buddhists around the world, this should be practiced consistently for a very long time. I saw in the respected Master Uyi's new commentary, if one does not observe this, they are not a true Buddhist disciple. He said, if you do not truly uphold this profound teaching, if you do not diligently practice this essential Ullambana Dharma, then you are certainly not a genuine Buddhist. You are merely a Buddhist in name without true commitment. However, if you never sincerely recite the sacred Ullambana Sutra, then you cannot be considered a truly filial and devoted Buddhist. The sutra of ours is also especially extraordinary and remarkable. I am also especially grateful to everyone present here. Otherwise, if none of you were here, I would not have the opportunity to teach this profound sutra. Although we are not like we were in the past, with so many loyal followers, it's truly remarkable. Some people are still able to, through various means, receive this precious voice and receive these important words. In this way, in fact, everyone understands what is contained in the Ullambana Sutra. Therefore, these extremely important Dharma treasures and sacred scriptures, we should always do our very utmost to diligently recite and actively propagate these teachings worldwide. We must never let them disappear completely in the long river of history. These aspects are indeed extremely valuable and profoundly beneficial for all individuals involved. Furthermore, it is imperative that everyone acknowledges and actively embraces their personal responsibility in this matter. In fact, regarding the Ullambana Sutra, as we mentioned earlier in the very beginning, it was especially practiced in India. Later, it gradually spread to ancient China, and then its profound influence steadily reached distant places like Japan as well as Korea. Our chubby young friend over there, it is also extremely popular and widely practiced in their country. And also in Malaysia, Singapore, and many other places, especially wherever there are Chinese people, the revered Ullambana Sutra and its significant Dharma assembly are still widely observed and practiced. In the foreseeable future for our Dharma friends here, especially if one day you are presented with the opportunity, many of us may no longer be present in this earthly world, but you should still hold Ullambana Dharma assemblies in different temples and in various Dharma centers. If there are no ordained monks or nuns, lay practitioners themselves can also gather in the Dharma center, and on that day everyone can make offerings to the Buddha and the Sangha. And if there are no other Buddhist monastics present, everyone can simply eat delicious vegetarian food together and make offerings on that auspicious day. Isn't it true that many of us nowadays especially love to have gatherings and meals together? You can organize your own gathering, recite the Ullambana Sutra sincerely and with a truly devout and reverent heart, and dedicate the merit to all mother sentient beings. Of course, if there are monastics present, that's ideal, but if there are no monastics, as long as you give rise to bodhicitta, what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cherish most is sentient beings. And among all offerings, bodhicitta is supreme. So if you give rise to bodhicitta in this way, even if you can't find any monastics, it's still acceptable. If you give rise to bodhicitta and recite this sutra, the Buddha is pleased. This is a day joy to the Buddha. It's an especially happy day for the Buddha. So everyone should really always earnestly uphold and diligently practice this sacred sutra from now on and into the future. Maudgalyayana, the venerable bhikshus, and the entire fourfold assembly of disciples all joyfully accepted and actively practiced it. All right, this sutra has now been completed.
Sonam dei tamse rogani tonne de Dharma pasi tirgana jirano chupai chupun zonen droa droa
ma bandangara badna asadorda ma bandangara badna asadorda Bandangara Banma Sadarda